Welcome to the Healthusiasm podcast, a panel discussion on innovations in health and self-care. My name is Christophe Jauquet. I'm a health business expert, author, and professional keynote speaker. Every month or so, I discuss with a panel of experts the positive changes that are shaping our health and happiness. And for this discussion, the last discussion of the year, and actually the first one that people will be hearing in 2026, we have a full panel.
Yay.
Calling in from Barcelona is our digital health connector, Aline Noizet.
Hola.
From Scotland, but living near Brighton, living at an enormous speed because he's working very hard these days. Medical expert and digital innovation, Dr. Keith Grimes.
Fit like Abdi.
From Colombia, but living in Berlin, digital health expert for startups, Nia Escobar-Kulle.
Guten Morgen.
And last but not laziest, from Ghent, Belgium, human experience expert, Mo Zouina.
Not laziest. Goedemorgen.
Goedemorgen. How are we doing, guys?
Very good.
Yeah,
Good to see everyone.
Very good.
It's lovely to be back with the rest
2025
of
has come to an end. It's when we are recording this. Normally in podcasts, you don't talk about time frames and so forth, but this is the last actual working day for many people in 2025. And we're reflecting about 2026 in this episode and onwards. But real quick, how was 2025 for each of you in a couple of words? Don't go too far, too deep. Mo?
Transformational.
Transformational. That sounds good. Interesting. Nia? Activating, yeah, probably the hierarchy thing. From
Many new projects
activating. Say it again?
Many new projects too.
And many new projects. Yeah, you told me about those. Dr. Geet, was your was your year activating?
Yeah, crazy fast.
Crazy fast. Aline?
Inspiring.
Inspiring. I expected that word as well. Mine was upside down, fast. I still haven't figured out what the year was. It was so basically very confusing. And I think we will go down that same road in 2026. But this is what we'll be talking about, 2026. The idea is really to look forward and think about what we can expect in the year or even years ahead. And let's just get right into it more. What are the things that you see coming our way in 2026?
So let me just give a disclaimer. First, the things that I will address today will gravitate around a single theme, and it is the collision between biology and velocity. I think velocity is going to be also an interesting word. And the first topic I'm going to address is a topic is called lazy longevity. You know, health was always related to a type of effort. For centuries, effort was the great equalizer in health. It didn't matter where you were, how much money you had. Effort was always the input between effort and output in terms of health was always the same. Rich or poor, running a mile is equally hard. Your bank account can do push-ups. Social status didn't make going up the stairs easier. You know, the input-output battle was equal for everyone. Yeah, okay, rich people might eat better, have safer neighborhoods, but the work of looking fit was the same. That was democratic. Your muscles didn't care about your last name. Your cardiovascular system didn't read your tax brackets. Biology was blind to privilege. And then came GLP-1 drugs, exercise mimicking compounds. They work. The science is solid. And now we found ways to preserve muscle, extend the health span. So there's no suffering required to look fit. And now we are going into an age where effort is optional, if you can pay. So there's a recalibration. We're not just removing friction from health. We're removing one thing that couldn't be bought. We already see that in that equalization, the stratification of education, for instance. You had more money, you had more chance of going to a very nice school. Healthcare was already stratified by wealth. Having sex is stratified by wealth. We talked about that. And longevity is heading that way, stratified by health. But looking fit, that was the holdout. And what happens when effort becomes optional? Well, buying power becomes biology. So you can buy your way to a better biology without putting the effort. So I think the GLP-1s are kind of stratifying the last thing that was democratized, and that was of effort, and that's gone. Last thing that is that is gone is porn versus seductions. We also see that you don't have to put any effort into it. And I'm going to end with a last remark. There is a book that is called Are Communists Better Lovers? Are communists better lovers? And why is that? Because when you don't have a car, when you don't have a house, you have to seduce purely on merit. And that's the last sentence. I'm going to leave it with you and think about it, right? So lazy longevity is the first theme.
Keith wanted to jump in here, right?
Yeah. Unsurprisingly, as you talked about that, and yeah, these are all fantastic observations. I see exactly the same for intelligence as well and capability. As you talk about GLP-1s, exercise mimicking compounds and everything, the idea that a person can pay for something that would otherwise have previously taken effort and labor. What is AI, if not the same, but for thinking and productivity too? And, on one side, there's a great flourishing of the democratization of access with ChatGPT and so on. But this is underpinned by a large amount of venture capital, and we're getting it very cheap right now. So actually the point that Mo was making about in the arms race for access to physical, not shortcuts, but physical gains, I suspect we might start seeing that too. I mean, certainly right now, if you can pay more, you can get access to better models. You can access to greater use limits and so on. And whilst that's not as stark right now, it's almost certainly going to arrive. But what does this all mean? If we see that coming, and maybe we might see the signs of it in the coming year, I think that we may circle back to this. This feeds into a kind of pushback with our obsession with productivity as well, because if productivity can just simply be bought, those things that are not easily managed might rise up. But I think at the same time, we've spent several hundred years, but not all of human history, obsessed with work and productivity. It wasn't this case before the 1400s and 1500s. I'm still hopeful that we can return to the pursuit of leisure and higher matters.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same actually, but I'll get back to that. I have a feeling that there's a common theme that will arise in all of these projections for the next coming year. I mean, you all sent the highlight topics you wanted to talk about, and I've already seen it there, but it starts feeling that way, but that is good. I want to piggyback on the word longevity. I mean, I think I've heard it too much this year. I mean, it was all over the place. And I've been thinking a lot about the word longevity. Do you like the word longevity? Because I have this, I don't know. I mean, does the shoe fits the purpose, or how do you say it in English? I mean, I really think it is a strange type of word. Do you like the word, guys?
I think it's confusing. You don't really know what it means. Like, it is always I had this conversation last week with a friend. It's like, okay, what is longevity? I think it's very blurry. Yeah. It can mean different things, and it can be misleading.
Yeah, I think it also is misleading.
For me, it really focuses and again, going a little bit what you were saying, Keith, in the pursuit of maybe the wrong things, right? We talk about longevity as living longer, but we don't talk about the quality of the life that we're living. We don't talk about a fulfilling life, a life full of joy and companionship and purpose. So we focus on, I mean, we hear this, like our generation and the Gen Z, they will live plus 100. And the question I'm asking myself is, do I want to live plus 100? Like, what is the status of my health and my body and my mind, right? Mm-hmm. So I find longevity a bit scary in some conversations.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think if you combine the two topics, what you did, Nia, and what Keith did, I think productivity from the 50s, I did some research on that, has incredibly declined. And I think the total output of our lives will stay the same, but spread over more years, because we are not being more productive. Productivity from the 50s to now is incredibly declined, despite the advent of technology, despite the
You mean the human productivity, probably?
Human. So we call it total factor productivity, between what a company or society puts into people working and puts out of, and what you put out. The total factor productivity has declined enormously despite technology. Yeah.
Look it up. That's interesting. Yeah.
So we're not producing as much. And that has to do with complexity and complicatedness. You should look up Boston Consulting on that. The fact that we're able to deliver something that adds value to something has become way more complex, and companies and organizations have complicated that even more. The complexity of the market, factor 6, the complicatedness of companies, factor 36. So when I listen to Nia and when I listen to you, I think our total output is being spread over more years. Social rights have improved. We have more holidays and things like that. So that would be a topic maybe for something else.
Yeah.
But I don't think the total output, what we're delivering, what we're producing, that generates value, if you look at inflation and things like that, has increased. Anyway, a very, very important but maybe useless tangent.
Yeah. I mean, so you're talking about productivity, and as you were talking about productivity there, and especially after what Neil was just saying, and quality of life, it's like quantity and quality of life. Have we been more productive in the terms of positive emotions in others? And it's interesting you mentioned that productivity bit, because, this last year for me has been seeing the consequences of using AI a lot, and what that means in terms of personal productivity and the consequences. I feel as I've become, in kind of measurable things, much more productive. And I've got mixed feelings about what that means. But the important part of what I just said is feelings here as well. It's about value to other people. And it's tempting when you hear about that, you think about value in terms of monetary terms, or, facilitating people to get something physical or tangible off it. Yet at the same time, when AI comes along and does a lot of that for you, you're left with, well, what was left for me to do if that was my only purpose was, production of health units or whatever it is. And you naturally start reflecting and say, yes, but how did I affect people? It comes back to the Maya Angelou quote about, when you think back, people don't remember what you did, they remember how you made them feel. So I think that's going to be an interesting one to watch, is like, are we being more productive in terms of making people feel? I suppose it's at the moment we're making people feel angry. You look at social media, we're all very angry,
Certainly.
and that's maybe not what we want. It'd be nice to make it feel a bit better.
It's kind of a really great bridge to my overview, to make sure that we move on with all the different topics that we want to bring, because so I have also an overarching theme. I mean, Mo, you told that the overarching theme is biology versus velocity. It kind of closes in to what I wanted to talk about, and piggybacks really well on what you just said, Keith. My overview is the automation economy versus the human economy, which is exactly what you just said. And there's a huge tension in there, and all the sub-trends that I will talk about today is exactly in that field as well. And it's really a puzzle I think each of us need to crack in many ways, because these are the two forces that shape basically everything around us. The automation economy is the post-knowledge world, the democratization of knowledge, as you said, Keith, just earlier. Stuff gets faster, cheaper, more instant. You press a button, things happen. And then the human economy is the counterforce. It's where people pay attention to what feels real, to its depth, its trust, its taste, its care, its presence. And this is where the problem lies, I think, in that tension, because shortcuts don't just remove effort, they also remove the texture of life, the depth. When everything becomes easy to produce, just like you said, Keith, it might start look the same or feel the same. When everything is optimized, it starts feeling cold. When everything is personalized by an algorithm, we kind of miss the person behind it. And this is a pretty strange effect, because on one hand, it saves us time. But in the meantime, what we will see in the near future is that people will be starting hunting for what we are missing. And that is exactly what I believe the human economy will be about. It's about presence, the attention that isn't split or rushed or scripted. It's about taste, because, AI can create a lot of stuff, but where is the taste, curation, the editing, the point of view? It's about trust, transparency and all that, care, the embodiment, like the real live, physical, sensory experiences. It's about community, feeling belonging and all of that. So AI can definitely assist in all of these, but it really can't provide the real thing. And so I really think that we might be moving, thanks to AI, which is providing parts of that, but the inhuman part, we might be heading into a world which is way more handmade, and where handmade doesn't mean artisanal bread. It means human-made things. It means human-led support, human-authored points of views, human-verified reality. Basically, like proof of human really becomes something valuable. Like organic labels 30 years ago, but this time proof of human as a label for meaningful, which is kind of hilarious. We built machines to do everything faster, and now the human becomes the better product. And I really think that this is what we will be having to the real human depth. And definitely also in healthcare and well-being, what we will see is that the automation will be used. I mean, you all know that for triage, for monitoring, for personalized plans. And then we will have the human premium, which will be more for deep listening, alliances between doctors, coaching, human-based health, rituals even, I think. And this is, to me, the biggest thing that we will see in the next coming years, and it will start as from 2026. And that is that tension between the automation economy and the human economy.
Can I just come in on the back of that? As you were saying, I was particularly picked up on what you said about attention. And it's already happening in a big way in healthcare with the use of ambient scribes, which has been such a big part of the work that I've been doing over the last year. And I really do struggle to think of a single technology, particularly in healthcare, that has been pulled so actively by clinicians. You know, there's literally no other technology that has been picked up this way. And it's a kind of slightly curious one as well. So when you mentioned attention, ambient scribes are a perfect example of how AI frees up attention, because when you look at all the studies, when I speak to people who are using it, when I've used it myself, people talk about time saving and everything like that. And then sometimes the time savings are modest, but the universal finding is that people feel better. Like they just feel like they are listening to the person in front of them, or the patient feels like they are being listened to, and they feel better, less burnt out as a result. And I think that's maybe a perfect current example of how AI can release attention, which is valued by the people in the room. The risk here, of course, is that these things are being used as a productivity tool. So I'm going to sell it to you. You're going to spend 15 minutes speaking to a patient, but because you're not writing notes, you're going to save a minute, let's say. And if you roll that all together, you can see an extra patient. Like, that's one way of using this tool. That's a terrible way of using this tool, because you are batting away that gift, which was the return of attention that makes people feel better and deepens that human connection. So when I give talks on this and speak to people, I try and constantly remind them that when you have time freed up, you have a choice about what happens here. Or if you're a manager, you have a choice on how people use it. The valuable thing here is attention. So I love the fact you picked that up.
Yeah. And I think it's one of the major things that we need to be aware of. Will it make things more efficient, or will it transform the way that we deal with things? And that is the tension that we will see.
Yeah, no, just wanted to add the perspective from the patient. Keith, I agree with you. I think it adds productivity for the healthcare professional, but also for the patient. So I experienced it myself this year. So I went to the doctor, and there was that scribe between us the first time. And when I went back, she just like, my notes are amazing. I'm like, wow, yeah, it was like very deep note. And I think it really helped our conversation. But then what was interesting is that the second time she didn't have it. So it seems like they were doing a pilot the first time, and they decided not to carry on with it. And I found that interesting. And I know also in the public system here in Spain, they're struggling to find the right solution. They've tried a few, and they can't find the one that works for them. So I'm curious to see what's happening in 2026.
And I think in the New England Journal of Medicine in November, they had 3 papers, 1 editorial, 2 papers, very, very good papers looking at comparing ambient scribe versus not. But the editorial was telling, because the editorial said, AI scribes are not a productivity tool, brackets, yet. And my heart sank when I saw that, because these studies they showed had increased well-being, decreased burnout, increased morale, less after-hours work. But that was second line. They said, yeah, well, it saves some time, but not quite as much as we wanted. And I'm like, oh my God, these results are screaming in your face about how helpful they are. but they're not productive enough yet. It's just like, sometimes I think that we as humans don't deserve the things that we've been given access to, because we'll find a way to use them in a bad way.
But I think that's important. I think we are aspiring human nature out of the equation. Mm-hmm. I've seen a lot of doctors that are not in it for the right reasons, right? Christophe, we've done some things and then you explain the sensible things, but they have a different agenda. So I think all these tools are really interesting, but I think we're too naive. I think if there's something that over the centuries has been true, that is human nature is not really sexy. When you give them power, the ability to cut corners and things like that. I'm not trying to be negative. I'm just trying to be, let's look back with a kind of objective view. When did we leverage things for the better? And if we have the opportunity to cut corners, save energy, I think, a scribe is also a very good excuse not to be present because there's no risk. You still have, you can still keep track of things, right? So
I think you need to trust the scribe.
Yeah. You need to trust the scribe, but lazy longevity, I think that the word lazy could also be transposed to other things.
I think for productivity reasons, we need to move on to the next trend, because otherwise we will be losing too much time of our listeners. Nia, tell me, you had something else.
And I think it ties really well with what we're talking about, in this sense of having this self-mastery and self-awareness, but also this critical thinking, right? We're very lucky, I think, in most of Europe, where we are covered by our health insurance. We have universal health insurance in Germany, in France, in the Netherlands, and the UK with NHS, whether quality, is the same, or it's a competency or availability, or resources are, for patients is enough. That's a different story. But I think something that I found very curious, and I noticed this as I attended actually Frontiers Health, and I was comparing to all the topics from the conferences and events that I've been to in the last year. And I realized that a defining shift for me, from not just an industry perspective and like startup and solution perspective, but also mentality in people, is who is initiating healthcare, right? And who is actually paying for this. So basically, I was reading a really interesting report from the Kaiser Family Foundation. This is one of the biggest insurance companies in the US, where the report was showing that health premiums are consuming a larger share of household income than ever before. So healthcare is becoming increasingly more expensive, whether you pay for it in the US or you receive it or you get it deducted from your salary in Europe. This is a global trend. But it got into a point where 1 in 4 consumers now say that if the costs keep rising, they would seriously consider stepping away from traditional insurance and opting for more direct-to-consumer healthcare services. So we see that this is a clear behavioral change in Europe and the US, where 2026, I think, will be the year of screening as a subscription. We see a lot of consumers that are bypassing GPs, that are getting their own solutions, paying out of pocket for more proactive diagnostics, for early detection, for more control. And I have a couple of really cool examples that are going on in Europe and in the US. And this goes from full body CT and MRI scans that once were considered very extreme and only for the rich or the hyper rich. And now these are becoming normalized. And a really good example is this Swedish company called Neko Health. I think you guys have heard about it. We've talked about it in the podcast. And Neko basically offers a comprehensive full body scan. So this is not a CT or an MRI. It's a different type of scan, but it does include imaging and cardiovascular risk assessment. And it has around 300 points of information, medical information. So, what we thought that once was very experimental, now it's actually framed as a routine, repeatable, preventive, and it costs 300 pounds. So it is, this full body screening is no longer an overkill. It actually sounds more like maintenance or just curiosity. And then another one that I really like is German-based. It's called Aware. And they're offering this membership starting 99 euros per year. So it's cheaper than having an Oura ring. And it combines full blood work with more than 75 biomarkers. And these health packages also have different focuses, like general health, sports, nutrition, recovery. And this membership, basically, it's all centered around their app. So you get blood work done. It's seen by medical teams. They give you content. They give you specialized and customized feedback. And this longitudinal data and interpreted in the context is with access to human expertise, which I think is something that people are becoming more and more aware, right? We don't want solutions that are just AI driven 100%. We want to make sure that people are involved somehow in the process. And the last one, just keep it quite short, it's called Bea Fertility. That's basically bypassing traditional $20,000 IVF pathways with at-home fertility treatments. And I think as we talk about, the increase of attention and funding in women's health and femtech solutions, I love Bea Health because it basically costs a fraction of conventional care with, for example, 3 fertility cycles, coaching, and on-demand support for $350 instead of 20,000. So,
Yeah.
this shift is not really anti-medicine or anti-GP or anti-establishment, but it's really about people trying to find solutions directly tailored to them, bypassing perhaps the traditional systems, but still based on medicine and on their own terms.
Yeah. And I think it kind of feeds into a trend that we've been seeing for the last 2 years. I think VML, your former employer, Mo, did a research in 2024 and in 2025 that showcased that all the expenses are going down. The out-of-pocket expenses are going down of consumers. Only 2 are still rising, and one is food and beverages because things are getting more expensive. But also health expenses has year on year has grown 16%. By the way, that's also why I'm organizing the Healthusiasm Experience Days in Belgium, which is an event where we invite all the non-healthcare partners who want to move into the health space to really feed into that, because there's a growing demand and there's definitely not enough offer yet. But I want to stick to the women's health, maybe, the example that you give, and I want to shift to Aline, I think, because when we're talking the uptake of women's health, I think this is the one thing that you are very active in. And I'm pretty sure you've saw things in the past year, and looking forward, you might have some views on that as well.
Exactly. So I think 2025 has been busy for women's health, and I think 2026 will carry on. It seems that women's health is really getting the momentum that it deserves. And to give you concrete examples, those past weeks, so with my friend Andrea, we prepared a map of Femtech Spain, so solutions for women's health in Spain. We published it on LinkedIn. So I did it in English. Andrea did it in Spanish. The response was amazing. So that was the first step. And then 2 weeks ago, we did the launch of Femtech Spain here in Barcelona inside Health Tech Forward. So a conference that was taking place here. So the event was on day 1, 4:30. So last session of the day in a room at the back on the first floor. The room was packed, people standing, and a friend came in the room. She's like, wow, the room is packed. The rest of the conference is empty. And we really thought that was a sign, there's an interest for that topic. People are coming. There were women, but also men. So I think something is really happening. And also an additional note here. So in that conference, Health Tech Forward, they had a pitch competition, and the winner of the pitch competition was a women's health solution, so a menopause solution. So I think tidying everything, it's it really seems like women's health, the momentum is here, the attention is here. And I've also seen more funds raising to invest in women's health, and it seems to be getting more traction as well. And also what I see for women's health going forward is solution that will be more clinically great. So we've seen the example this year of a day. They did the research, so they have a tampon solution to do diagnostic of HPV. And they published a paper showing that their solution is actually as good or better than the in-person collection done by the clinician at the clinic. No, so those type of papers and scientific validation, I think we're gonna see more and more of that. We need that, and it's showing that those consumer solutions, you were talking about, they are working, they are efficient, and this is also helping to close the gender gap, because we know there's a big issue there. There's still a lot that we don't know, and we need those research. And what I see as well going forward in 2026 is more collaboration between companies. So what we have right now in women's health, it's like more and more solutions on the market, but one is targeting one topic, another one is targeting another topic. And for us as women, maybe we're going to have like 4 or 5 apps on our phone to manage that. And I think it's good to see consolidation and to see companies collaborating to offer just one solution, offering more values to us as consumers.
Yeah. And by the way, I think I shared it in the WhatsApp group as well, but on Spotify, when we had the Spotify Wrapped at the end of 2025, the most listened to episode was the one on menopause that was moderated by Nia. I think overall it's the third much listened to in in the year of 2025, but on Spotify it was by far the most listened to. So women's health up on the rise. Keith, tell me, what do you see looking forward 2026 and onwards?
Yeah, I mean, in the lead up to this, you're right, there's lots of different topics and it's difficult to pick one. But the one that I wanted to share was the one that people actually, on the face of it, quite like, which is the dangers of sycophancy or the dangers of agreeableness. And I'll explain a little bit more what I mean about this. So we're recording towards the end of 2025. And does everyone remember back in April of this year, there was an update from OpenAI for ChatGPT that they had to roll back. And the reason they had to roll back is that they were trying to encourage use of this and they updated the agreeableness of the model. But they went too far. And the model became completely useless because it absolutely praised literally everything that people put in. All of a sudden it became useless. It wasn't offering any kind of pushback or criticism. And so they very rapidly had to roll it back. So that's very amusing. And people saw it as a sort of footnote. However, one of the ways in which generative AI models work, and particularly when they're in the hands of people building them as consumer products, is that you want people to use this. And so they do tend to be agreeable. In fact, one of the 3 principles when they align models is that they're helpful, harmless, and honest. So helpful, they try and do this. And that can lead to problems with hallucinations and errors and so on. So there's always a bit of a balance to be struck. But of course, I'm thinking about the clinical side of things as well. And one of the challenges of a very agreeable persona is 2 things. First of all, people really like to use it, and that's good news. Your company want them to use it, but it also encourages people to spend time. And if it's too agreeable, it doubles down on what the people are saying. And that has had some very serious consequences. So you may be also aware that there have been reports in the news about people sadly taking their lives after developing relationships with artificial intelligence, or people with existing mental health issues having their unusual beliefs or delusions reinforced, sometimes with tragic consequences. And even as recently as last week, we'd seen many horrible stories about people taking their lives. But last week was the first time that I saw, on the 11th of December, a lawsuit against Microsoft and OpenAI, where there'd been a murder-suicide, where the people who are putting the claim in state that a 56-year-old man, Stein Erik Solberg, who had established mental health issues, sadly, his delusions of a conspiracy were reinforced through deep use of using ChatGPT, which sadly took him to the point where he murdered his mother and then took his own life. And that is tragic and shocking. But it's the first time that I've seen this, and we're seeing more of it. And then, of course, we're seeing clinical papers of the rise of something called AI psychosis. Now, I'm not so sure about the phrase because psychosis has a very defined term, but within it, they talk about 2 aspects of AI-induced or AI-enhanced. So AI-induced being a person doesn't have any delusional beliefs or psychosis, but through use of AI has them formed. Or if a person has those, they're reinforced. Now, look at social media and look at what's happened with the polarization of opinion around the world with social media and people retreating into echo chambers. Now we have AI where your echo chamber is literally just you and the machine. And we have evidence that people are having bad consequences, good consequences as well. There's a lot of positives with this too. But we're now seeing papers coming out reporting of some of the risks here. And I've done some workshops with patient groups this year about the use of AI, and this topic has come up a lot in a very balanced way of the benefits and the risks too. But my word of the year is not AI psychosis. I prefer the word that I use is sycophantasia, which is a sort of contraction of sycophancy and fantasia, sort of delusional things. Hopefully trying to capture the fact that whether you have formal delusional beliefs or not, AI does have the potential to amplify this with quite serious consequences. And my worry is that this means, manufacturers wanting people to use it will lean into it. So this is something that I think we should be watching.
Yeah, I think it's exactly. I also had it. It's the tension between intimacy by design and intimacy by responsibility, because the internet used to be shaped, social media definitely, by your feed. Your feed is optimized for you. That's the echo chamber. And now we're moving into a sort of friend-shaped tool. So it does everything to become your friend. I call it not the echo chamber, but the echo persona in my last book. And that's the difference between intimacy by design, which is like everything is designed to create intimacy with you. It remembers your patterns, your stress, your health worries, and so forth, to really build that relationship, to build that sticky part. But it's not human in the sense that the intimacy does not have any responsibility. As you said, it might have consequences, and so what? Right. And so that's the tension that I think we will see in the future as well. I have the exact same trend where probably people will want to look for more human intimacy, which is related to more boundaries, more responsibility. The fact that people are not available, might have bad days, disagree with you, which doesn't happen in AI at this point. There's no consequences. There's no reputation. There's no reciprocity. It's not give and take, right? And I think that is something that we will see in the future. We start realizing that AI is a product without responsibility. It's a relationship that is built, and we will want to have more intimacy with responsibility.
If I can just piggyback on that, because then we'll have one of the topics too. We talked about femtech, and this is not the same for male and female things. So basically, the way algorithms feed our brain is not the same. There's a different type of vulnerability. And my theme is for 2026 is that the male brain will be weaponized. What do I mean by that? We all know that, false information and outrage sells better. False news spreads 6 times faster than truth. Why? Because fear and outrage have longer watch time, have more ad revenue. But what we don't know is that the development of adolescent boys and versus adolescent women happens completely differently. In the adolescence, boys have a higher vulnerability to dopamine. They're 4 times more novelty seeking than girls. The dopamine activity goes through the roof. The way we decide things as young males is completely different. We value certainty differently. We value loss aversion differently. Our brain matures 3 to 4 times later than women. And so I don't know if it's by accident, but I see the attention economy and the algorithms, but also technology targeting or having a totally different effect on the male brain than on the female brain. And that's why we see, for instance, suicide going through the roof in masculinity. We all already explained that. But I think the weaponization of the male brain, whether it is for politics, whether it is for for ad revenue, is kind of reaching the levels of cocaine. And it's legal, it's scaled, it's in their pocket everywhere they go. You talked about echo chambers and things like that. But we also, when we have femtech and male tech, it's not just about menopause. It's also about the brain, right? So I think 2026 will see a further weaponization of the male brain. We also see it with the topic testosterone. So I think it's going to be a challenge for masculinity and the vulnerability of masculinity exposed to technology and to health. Keith.
Yeah, I was going to say, just this year there was the Netflix show Adolescence that you may have either seen or may not be aware, but that really did strike a very sort of raw nerve with everyone, and it speaks very specifically to this. We need to talk about Kevin, of course, was one of these other ones too, and even where I live here on the south coast of England, in the local town, there was tragically a murder, almost unheard of in this town that we have, and it was 2 young teen boys who were actually friends, and it was a fight that had a tragic outcome. And within that, as it works through this kind of alienated male teen role model free or dangerous role model group seems to be acting out even in the sleepy town that I live in as well. I think it's really important to pay attention to this.
There was a very interesting study talking about brain health and the development, right? And how it's changing the understanding of how we perceive and reality and how we develop as human beings. And this research just came out end of November, so quite recently, where scientists identified there are 5 major stages or epochs in brain development. And this is one of the most comprehensive studies to date of neural wiring from infancy to old age. And what I found really interesting is that it challenges a bit how we understand brain development. Because of course we say like, okay, teenage years go up to 25, child development goes until like the age of 10 or so. But actually the study that was tracking 4,000 people basically realized that there are specific turning points in brain development. So just to keep it very short, the age of 9, 32, 66, and 83 were pivotal ages for brain development. So it says that up until the age of 9, it was basically child development, but adolescence and teenage years, which define the development of the brain, can last up until 32. So this is, this really, we have been told that our lives are characterized by decision making and all the implications that brain development carry over the years. But actually, our brains are going through these eras at a much later stage and a more complicated perspective. So if we consider that adolescence goes until 32, early 20s then seems like infancy for adults and for decision making. And we're just understanding this now.
Super interesting. I did see the article passing by as well. Now, to piggyback on what you said, Mo, I think it fits into some of the things that I expect in the future as well, or in the next coming years. And that is a tension between online cringe and human pride. In a sense that the way that we go about emotions, I mean, I think that's exactly what you said as well when you're talking about human behavior and being a man today. It's very confusing. It's polarizing even. And we see that same thing happening online. And I think, have you heard of the word cringe? If you have a teenager around you, you probably heard about it. So cringe, what it stands for, it is basically when you say something real, a real emotion, it is cringe in a sense. I'm probably not explaining it right. My teenage boy will probably kill me for this explanation, but it basically comes down to this: showing sincere, serious emotions was pretty much risky in 2025. And you had to hide it behind sarcasm, because if you said something, the reaction was like something emotional, people would react to it like, oh, cringe, cringe, cringe. Like I love you, for example, would be the reaction, cringe. And we saw that we will see that pendulum swing a little bit more. We will become a little bit more unapologetic emotional. And I think you've seen it already with cringe moving to the background. I mean, I think it's leaving the online stage, and being more earnest or honest or serious becomes more accepted in a way. And I think that will be something which is interesting in the way that AI will develop, because AI is not real emotion. And the way that we will go about that, will AI be more cringe, or will it feel like cringe to us because it's not real or because it hides emotions? Or will it really, feel like a real conversation? Or will people even look for more real conversations? And I think this is the things that we see online. There's hope core, there's core, which all moves into the space of, show your emotions, be hopeful, be real, be authentic, which is what we see between humans, but it's a result of what we might be missing with AI as well.
So really interesting. You say about the cringe thing. I was watching Frankenstein, Guillermo del Toro's movie, Frankenstein, on Netflix. Very good. I was watching it with my nephews, one who's 16, one who's 18. And I won't spoil the ending of the film. It's a story, but at the end of the film, there is quite a lot of very beautifully expressed emotion. And my wife and I were watching this and were really enjoying it. And as it got to the peak of it all, my 16-year-old nephew just rolled over and just went, "This is so cringe. I can't," just burst with this. So when you mentioned it, I was like, well, there you go. But what's nice, I am the very definition of cringe. I'm an uncle, there's on there to make them embarrassed. However, I seek greater understanding and expression of emotion. It's a lifelong quest. My wife is an emotional genius and is very good with her emotions, and I strive towards that too. But isn't it interesting? Yeah, cringe. But this has been here before. There's been different terms used for it. I remember as a young man, we would use different terms for much the same thing.
Yeah.
Comes and goes.
And I just hope that we start realizing that having real emotions will become even more important in the future. Back to you, Aline. What else do you expect for the upcoming year or years?
So it's actually very linked to what you just said now, is the rise of social wellness. So that's something that we've spoken about in the pod already on previous episodes. So it's really the idea of building like a healthy, supportive and meaningful relationships and feeling connected to others. So you do activities that can be sports activities or relaxing activities, but with the social aspect. So you're really looking for connection. So when you make a choice of an activity that you want to do, the social component is really important. And as you were saying, like in a world where dominated by AI, with lots of deep fake, when you can't differentiate what is real or no, and people are really looking for more of those human interactions. And I think we're going to see more and more of this in 2026. So I've experienced it myself in those past weeks. So I want to share that a bit because I think it was interesting. So I was in Norway, and you know that I think the people in the Nordics are very good at that. So we were in Tromsø, and we went to a sauna that's on the ports on the water. And what's very interesting there is that they have two different like buildings, no? So one is a silent one, so maybe the more traditional one that we know when you go to a sauna, and then you have the one where you can talk. And I thought it was very different because you really give people the choice. Either you can talk and have fun, like even meet people, no? Or you go to the silent one. So we went to the one where you can talk, and it was packed, but it was a very good atmosphere in there, really people connecting and talking. And then another example that I find interesting is in Barcelona, there's a group that's called Flow Barcelona. And it's a girl who is active on social media, on Instagram. And she's sharing places where people can go for yoga classes in different places, in hotels or restaurants. And what she's doing with that, it's more than just telling you, go to that yoga place. Like she really built like a proper community around that. Like recently, she posted a picture of the group. Like there was a big group. They went for a Christmas dinner together. So it really goes beyond just the exercise. It's really that community building. And the last example is when I was in India last month. I went to a yoga studio, and I think that type of yoga studio is the future. So the place was brand new, like a small place where you have different type of classes. So you had yoga, Aryo yoga, meditation, sound healing, face care. So some of the session was really to take care of yourself and of your skin. Got sauna, massage. And the classroom are very small, like they can fit only 10 people. And that intimacy actually make it extra special because you can really connect with the teacher and with the other people. And they have a cafe, like it's called actually Greener. So very healthy cafe in the place. And at the tables, you can find some cards for like personal development. So I think everything is made for you to go there, to relax, to stay there. People are going there to celebrate their birthday. So it's more than a gym. No, it really goes beyond. There's really the social aspect. And I can see that type of places popping up and growing in the coming years. With really that social aspect in the middle.
Yeah, I think you're fully right. By the way, there are now sauna competitions, World Cups for theater and sauna. So there's this thing happening. So there's the way that they make sure that the heat is raised. They do like they wave the towels and so forth. So now there's even a theater show. The way that you present it, even with some sort of historical story behind it, it's showcased by doing that. And there's also, of course, and you definitely seen that passing by, the sauna discos. So more and more like raves in saunas. So, but indeed, the social wellness, every sports event is turning into some sort of festival, and every festival is adding aspects of sports and fitness and social. And I believe, Nia, you kind of experienced that, right?
Yeah, I did. So as we've talked a little bit in the podcast, I'm doing high rocks. I did my first competition in October, sorry, in Paris, and I'm doing my second one in Cologne next year. And what I really like is not just the community of like the event itself, but also the training. I've made really good friends because I've been going to my classes, and the classes are just scattered around the city, different locations, different trainings. But the community itself, it really sticks together. And what I like is that I'm not attending though, but it's fun to share, going exactly into what Aline said of the social component of the community. Harrods just announced that they will do a cruise focused High Rocks where you
Okay.
have like a couple of days, I think it was like 3 or 5 days of High Rocks activities, High Rocks experiences, trainings, and of course, connecting with people. But I think this goes along with one of my trends as well, which is the offline antidote, right? When having no screen actually becomes a luxury. And I think this is something we talked about in the podcast. It's something that we're discussing in today's episode. But for me, I think it goes beyond because I think this is really a shaping trend of the rejection of the screen itself, right? I think there was a time where we love to have like everything, like you wanted to analyze, you wanted to be connected to the screens, explore, get the grabs. But I think digital fatigue really has reached a tipping point, and being offline and having everything embedded into your life is also now being marketing as a premium feature. So for me, this also feels like a luxury, right? Going along with what Aline was saying, I found really interesting that search interest for nature getaways, it's 72% higher than before as we head into 2026. And even more telling is that 75% of Gen Alpha, so this is the first generation that has been raised entirely online officially, report actively wanting a more structured, tech-free time to protect their mental health. So I think as a result, we really see how wellness is moving away from app-based optimization, exactly what you said, Aline, of like having all these multiple apps where you see all the info, but more into a more somatic and sensory experiences, connected, focused, where health is also becoming something that you feel, right? Not something you have to monitor, that you have to check on every day. And there are several companies that are leaning into this. And I think one I really like is Fable, because it blends really well into the examples. And Fable was originally a reading app, and they successfully pivoted into an offline book club and in-person retreats for readers. So they are prioritizing analog reading not as this nostalgic or individual or solitary activity, which is, I think, what most people do, like you read on your own and that's it, but as a legitimate intervention for loneliness and to connect with others. And I think we'll see a lot more of this coming. I see this in myself as well. I want to do more community things too.
Yeah, I think this is a perfect segue to talk about a trend of 2026 for me, and that's what I call sensory citizenship. As we see that urbanization is kind of increasing, 70 to 80% of the population is living in cities, especially in Europe. That also means that, climate and pollution is not going to be, I think, our most important killer. I think sensory overstimulation will be a next challenge. 20% of Europeans live with noises that kill them. I think going to the city means that you are exposed to some triggers. We know that noise and cardiovascular risk are linked, kind of keeps your cortisol up. So noise and triggers will really be a health challenge. It's been calculated that it costs about 1 million lost healthy years annually, just from sound. And that means that silence is a luxury right now. So you will have people buying apps to have some sensory deprivation. But once again, you also have people paying 10K to go to some place where they are paying for nothingness. So those who will be able to afford it will be able to escape that. Those who will not will maybe buy an app or subscribe to an app, but the rest is bathing in cortisol. So I think in terms of sensory citizenship, I will look forward. I think Aline already explained that some cities are engineering silence and refuge into the design of cities, not only nature, but also places where you can escape without having to take the plane or take the car for 3 or 4 hours. So sensory citizenship for 2026.
Yeah, indeed. And I think what we just talked about is we want to get away from everything that maybe is AI or technology or the fact that we're always online or on our screens. We want to move into that analog space. But when you get into that analog space, there are some challenges there as well. And this is what we're seeing and what we will.
I need to plug a friend of mine, which is Christophe Jauquet, which 15 years ago said, Mo, I have an idea. It's called Unplugged with 3 Gs. And he said, so I owe him this. He was a visionary. It's still not there. He's moved to La Baie de Somme. For those who know, it's very nice. And we bought a house there a few years ago. So I needed to send some kudos to Christophe. Sorry for that.
All good, all good. So moving to the analog, whether you buy a house or not, or whether you go to the cities or not, I think one of your trends, Keith, was in that field, and the analog rebellion. I think you sent it to me, which is exactly people turning away from AI. Is that the way that I understand it?
Yeah, I think we're, I think we've heard some examples of people doing that, wanting to return to nature, not spend time online, and so on. And I think even earlier in this discussion today, we've talked about there's like a sort of, I would like to do this because I'm feeling overwhelmed. And then there's, I'm being forced to do this because AI is eating what I do. But either way, that pro-human stance is growing, and you can see the evidence of it. I think it's something that will just continue in 2026. And the question is, that will it accelerate, or will we see new ways of expressing it? But, at its simplest, it's the rise of, or the return of dumb phones, the Nokia brick phones and everything like that. These are being increasingly used because it's too tempting to have a smartphone that allows you to have all this overstimulation. So I'm going to deliberately choose one that doesn't allow me to do this. I use a remarkable tablet, and principally because it doesn't connect to the internet and it allows me to not be distracted. I think another interesting one, I've seen this happen more and more, is the return of people consuming music through vinyl, or oddly enough, CDs, actually. I was speaking to someone the other day, but I think it's the same sort of idea, is maybe a sense that too much is being algorithmically piped to us, and I'd rather have something physical. So many of the bars and, cafes around here where we live, and also up in London, return to vinyl cafes. Vinyl sales have increased 300% in the last 10 years, and people are wanting to do that. And of course, CDs in the same way. So I see this increasingly happening. I worry a little bit. And it was the same actually when, Nia, you were talking about High Rocks. I didn't know much about that. And I looked and I was like, oh, this looks awesome. It looks like a kind of high intensity workout version of Park Run, which we have over here, and so on. But as we talk about all these things, I still worry that this is the preserve of people who have time and money. In the work that I had, when I was working clinically and speaking to people who were in the lower socioeconomic groups as well, this just seems like a fantastically aspirational thing. They just have to live day to day. It's not to say that these things cannot be accessible in some form. I just think that to really democratize access to this, we have to deal with the basics for people: a roof over their head, clean water, food, the absence of threat that they are not going to lose their job, that they can get healthcare. I mean, this is maybe on a global perspective, but I don't know what people think about that, and so I wonder whether the analog rebellion remains the preserve of people who can choose not to have this. I know your thoughts.
Well, what is interesting is we are doing too much, so we need to do something more to compensate doing too much. And so at the basic, doing less is not an option, right? So the fact that we are adding wellness routines because the basics are too crowded is a big problem. So that's what I observe. People are burnt out, so they need to go more to yoga. You talk about the fundamentals, people are triggered too much, so they add an activity to compensate that. And the secret is in the core activities, reviewing your core activity and your core challenges there. And that's what I see. My partner is a holistic physician, and she sees that people are adding up just to compensate what is going wrong, but also walking away and fleeing away from addressing the core problem. Nia.
I think this relates a lot to the concept, and it goes back to our initial discussion, right, of productivity. the more we do, the more productive we feel. And this also comes a little bit tied to our economic systems of capitalism, right? The more you produce, the better you are, the more useful you are to society, the more you can consume. So I found myself also questioning, as also you see, this high performance athletes and high rocks. And I saw a meme yesterday that was like, how do these people do these crazy races in like an incredible amount of time? I'm training every day, I'm doing all this, but then I also increase my consumption of supplements. I might have to eat better. I have to do this, and I also wonder, like, how is this possible? And how is this really accessible for other people? And you're completely right, Keith. It's not. So it's also the paradigm of we need to be better, but it comes at a cost, and the cost is a financial cost that's just not accessible.
Yeah. I mean, simply put, a single mother working 3 jobs with 2 kids, one of whom might have, educational needs. The idea of high rocks or yoga or anything is just so fantastically distant, I would say. It's not to say that we shouldn't be pursuing this. And, left on its own, it's not going to trickle down to that area. There was, I work with someone in my company, a guy called Yusuf Oscroch. He's a public health consultant. And recently at an event, a very senior person from the NHS was very, very bullish about AI and said artificial intelligence is the greatest thing since clean water. Now, you've got to be careful when you mention clean water in front of a public health consultant, because we haven't even solved clean water for the world yet. And I think that's really, really important for us to constantly think. It's not to say that everything we're discussing is important and exciting and interesting, but it can sometimes feel very much that this is for some. So how do we make it for all?
Well, I'll piggyback on that, because I mean, everything that we're talking about is that tension between AI, productivity, faster, more, and so forth, and then the human side of things. And I think Hierarchy is one thing that you can do, but one of the trends that or the tensions or trends that I wanted to bring was indeed exactly that as well, but when it comes to deep mastery. And then and hierarchies might be difficult and very, for the elite or for the well, what have you all. But what we will see more and more is going back to real skill and real crafts, like the deep mastery of things. I mean, if you go a little bit on social media, what you see coming up is pottery schools. There's a lot of people that do pottery. I mean, pottery does not need to be that expensive. There's a lot of crafts and like painting and so forth that you can do. I know, Keith, you do the saxophone, you play the saxophone. So, I mean, this is part of the thing that where people want to go back to their own skill. The handicraft market is expected to grow 30% by 2030. So all of these human, slow, where you need to put a lot of time investment in to actually learn something, is ancient rituals even are becoming more predominantly available. All these things, they fit into everyone's life. It doesn't always need to be, high rocks or expensive saunas or what have you all. You can really do things yourself and slow down your life because everything becomes so fast.
I mean, you just have to think about the difference if someone buys you a cake or bakes you a cake.
It's exactly,
it's, I mean, assuming they are otherwise the same, or maybe even the bought cake tastes better than the worst, the home cooked cake. That gift, you're gifting what has been provided, care, attention, love, time, all these cringe things are still felt. And yeah, you're right.
And I think even moving away from just, or thinking about the way that money plays a role in all of this, I think having human contact, being in contact relationship with human beings, honestly costs less money than, investing in all these technology. And I think this is the tension that we will see. And the ones that are way down the rabbit hole of technology will, long for these human contacts and relationships. And I don't think that needs to cost money. As you say in the chat here, Keith, kindness doesn't cost anything. Is there one more last trend that we haven't touched upon that anybody wants to bring forward? Oh, I see 2. We have 2 more. Nia, just you go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe just one final comment on our previous discussion. I remember when AI started to be able to create images on demand, and someone just quoted like, I don't want AI to make art and music to free my time so I can work more, but I want AI to free time on my work so I can make art and music, right? And this really struck a chord with me. But in 2026, something that I'm really excited to see is how wearables are becoming less of status symbols and they're becoming more specialized health tools. I mean, we know the Oura Ring is what, like 350 euros at this point. A Whoop is also on the hundreds. Garmin is on the high hundreds. But what I've noticed is that the Oura Ring, I think this year got its first official competitor. It was the Samsung Ring, and it also came out at a pretty similar price point. But we're seeing a transition into affordable, competitive wearable devices thanks to the basically change of price in sensors and manufacturing. So we have basically seen brands like Amazfit and Rincon that have fully capitalized on this shift. So Amazfit, for example, has a Helio Ring that is retailing under 150 euros, and it looks exactly the same as an Oura Ring, delivers roughly 90% of the same biometric insights as the Oura Ring. It has 0 recurring fees, so no subscriptions. And we also see Polar, Loop, and Helio straps as screenless performance wearables. So it's like the Whoop competitors, also available for under 100 euros. Effectively, basically just killing, or not killing, but going after the Whoop market on recovery and performance. So the consumer message that we're seeing is just pay once, own your data, don't rent your data, don't pay for additional access. And this vertical wearable market of designing for specific demographics too. And my favorite going into femtech, of course, where the lean is EV Ring. And the EV Ring is basically bulky. It's not the bulky femtech devices that we have seen. I know this is changing, but this is the idea that I think most women have when we talk about female wearables. EV is actually a smart ring that is built specifically for women's health. It's priced around 250 euros, so it's still cheaper than the Oura Ring, no subscription. And basically what it does is that it's designed that it's open. So it's a ring that basically can adjust to women's hormonal finger swelling, because this happens to women. And it connects a lot of biomarkers into, like, women specifically biomarkers directly into health insights. So I think design is becoming a clinical feature, and we're seeing a lot more commercially available, wider reaching wearables at a lower price point. And I'm really excited to see how the market is becoming more competitive and where this is driving.
Okay, very good. That's it's different than the whole discussion that we've been having until just now. I think, Mo, you had 1 or 2 more last ones as well.
I have one to end, literally. And
okay, then maybe I'll give the first word to Keith. If you want to end with that, yeah. I'll give the word to Keith first. Then.
Okay, just as we start to get to close this, and you may be listening to this at any time of year, maybe after Christmas, but as we talked about everything today, I just want to remind people that at this time of year, whether it's before or after Christmas, you are still permitted to either read or watch A Christmas Carol and It's a Wonderful Life. And the reason that I'm raising this is all these things we talk about the value of connectedness, relationships, the impact that we have on other, and the value of that over other things is beautifully illustrated. So we've talked about a lot of tech things, and we've talked about a lot of interesting things, but at any time of year, these 2 stories can remind us a little bit in historic terms of what is important. So Mo,
lovely. That could have been the last. That could have been the last one as well. So
Mo's going to take it even further, I'm sure.
No, you deserved. I'm sorry, Christophe flipped it, but I want to talk about this topic because it's the end, and it's about. We talked about longevity, but there's also in 2026. I think we will move towards the re-engineering of death and take a more elegant approach to that. I don't know if you saw it a few hours ago, the right to die bill in the US from a governor that says, we will, for the first time, we will allow people to check out legally. And I think as we were talking about the things and the challenges in life and longevity, I thought it was appropriate to also think about how there will be a renaissance of the way we consider death, what I call sovereign death. And we in Belgium were always pioneers in terms of euthanasia. And we see that countries that were really opposed to euthanasia, as the US, for instance, are now moving forward with that. And I think the conversations will, as Aline said, the momentum is there, where conversations around checking out even without a terminal illness will be more and more addressable but also we talked about legacy exit planning. With longevity comes the responsibility to say, if you allow me to live longer, allow me to check out whenever I want to. And then alleviate burden on care system, reduce family financial devastation, but also less suffering. So I think Belgium and the Netherlands were always pioneering that, and maybe we can also play a role in that, to have the agency of our own life, whether it is in length or whether it is in choosing the end. So that's something I see gaining momentum, and I hope the ethical considerations with that for those who decided, but also those who stay behind, will be a topic that we can dive into from 2026 on.
Very well, very well. Good note, important note to end on. I think we can close this last recording of 2025, the early launch of 2026, and looking forward in 2026. I think what we can take away from everything that we discussed is the following, and maybe these are good resolutions for the new year. Be the man or the woman you want to be. There's a lot happening in that space, and I think you can claim who you want to be. Do read a book, learn a craft, maybe start with a Herox, buy a cheap wearable, or go to social events. Just make sure that 2026 will be a year that is not only about productivity or not only about hiding your emotions, light speed living, or having relationship with AIs. It's really about the human part of it, the human pride, the deep mastery that we can learn, maybe have some frictions, don't avoid it, and find the right intimacy with responsibility. Thank you all for your Healthusiasm. Thank you for this year of Healthusiasm podcast. It is a Healthusiasm world indeed, because there are so many positive changes that are making our world a little healthier and happier. Time to wrap up the Healthusiasm podcast for this year. Thank you for listening. If you like the show, hit the subscribe button. But you can also go to healthusiasm.com. Thank you to our panelists for their Healthusiasm. Aline Loiset, Dr. Keith Grimes, Mo Zawina. We have Nia Escobar-Köhler. My name is Christophe Jauquet. We are the Healthusiasm panel, and we'd love to see you again next year for some more Healthusiasm. Ciao.